Hello there, HeroClub.com. I am Wheelchair21, your editor-in-chief and one of its four founding fathers. And today we have another interview for you. This time it is Starlight Runner Entertainment's CEO, Jeff Gomez.
Hey there.
Hey, thanks a lot
So great to be.
for doing this interview with us. I honestly didn't expect to be able to converse with you as easily as it was. I was honestly shocked after seeing the whole Ultraman Day 2020 stream.
Why? Tell me why it was
Uh,
surprising.
I wasn't sure how it would work for the channels. Wasn't entirely sure, and so I didn't expect to find you on just Facebook. I remember in Ultraman Day you did say just throw me a message on social media, and then I wasn't sure like would we even get the interview once I gave you the
Uh,
ping.
well,
So
it's my pleasure.
yeah, thank you very much though for giving us this opportunity.
Absolutely.
And since we know that you have a fixed amount of time, I did cut down some of the questions that we're going to ask. So, one of the things that I usually like to ask when doing any interviews is usually asking you what inspired you to become a writer and producer, and what was your education in pursuing your goals to start?
Great question. Uh, Early on, I of course wanted to be an artist, but my skills just did not. I couldn't do an isometric view of a dinosaur in the second grade, and that just frustrated me to no end. So I started writing about dinosaurs, and my teachers just reacted so positively to my writing that I kept right on going, and learned that I could truly, express myself best through fiction, essays, articles, things like that. And I kept it flowing. The notion of producing came a bit later in life when I essentially wanted so much to get stuff done, and there weren't many people around me in my circumstances to help me do it. So I started figuring out how different.
Sorry about that. I cut out.
No problem. How much did you get?
I'm not sure. I think it still says I'm recording, so I think it's still recording where we left off. So if you can just take it back from you were saying about you were working on essays and that in the second grade,
Sure, sure.
doing that.
It was a matter of getting great feedback on writing, which was the easiest and least expensive thing to do to express myself, and just keeping on going with that. And as far as producing is concerned, wanting to do things that most people didn't want to do, and me figuring out how to put them together. So making a Super 8 movie with stop motion animation, studying magazines and library books on how to do that, all the way through to producing fanzines and actual films. Ultimately, learning how the process works was my key to becoming a producer.
All right. And I think the other question I had as a follow-up would be, what specific writers or artists would you cite as your influence? Like, what were the ones to influence you in the first
Sure.
place?
Absolutely. It's well known that Tolkien was an amazing influence on me. J.R.R. Tolkien was the first author who absolutely convinced me of the reality of his fantasy world, Middle Earth, and the emotional burdens that the characters had to carry across that quest. Truly impressed me. The depth, the dimension, the history, the genealogies, the different languages were just impressed me about how a writer can truly fabricate a story world. I was also impressed by Stephen King, because here was someone who took the fantastic and placed it into a highly contemporary and gritty environment. And that really appealed to me, being a kind of inner city kid who had to struggle with the practical as well as supernatural thoughts, magical thinking. And believe it or not, the rock and roll musician Bruce Springsteen, who again took a kind of almost mundane environments and created a kind of mythic canvas for them, this kind of larger than life celebration of ordinary people was truly impressive. That combo, those three figures were some of the most influential in my life and career.
All right. Our follow-up to that would be then, what was the inception for Starlight Runner Entertainment? Who were its founding members, and how eventually did you become its CEO?
Sure. I had been working at Acclaim Entertainment and Acclaim Comics. They were a video game company. They made Mortal Kombat, and I had had some luck with them creating video games like Turok Dinosaur Hunter for the Nintendo 64, and all these spin-offs of Magic the Gathering. Actually, my first transmedia universe was the universe of Magic the Gathering, in comic books and video games and fiction and websites and things like that. Out of that experience, I felt strongly that there was a methodology to creating a story world across multiple platforms in concert. Nobody knew what I was talking about. But somehow I convinced some venture capitalists to finance my little company, Starlight Runner Entertainment, to allow me to attempt to do that on my own, create a universe that operated across different media. We might have been successful at that, but 9/11 happened, and my office was downtown New York City, Manhattan, and so we had to pivot and start creating story worlds for other companies like Mattel and Disney and you know, these Hollywood companies. So the founding members of Starlight Runner were myself, Chrysula Artemis, who became our creative director. She handled the graphic design, helped to create these mythology documents. Mark Pensavalli operated production. He had publishing experience. And Fabian Nicieza, who I'd worked with at Valiant and Acclaim Comics. Fabian had extensive comic book experience. He was the co-creator of Deadpool, and had written hundreds and hundreds of comic books for Marvel and DC and Dark Horse.
All right. Yeah, we actually had originally, but since we knew you had time constraints, wanted to ask you about Magic, and thankfully, asking that question at least addressed questions
you
we had to
go
cut.
on. Let's we'll give it a little extra time, so don't worry about it.
Okay, because one of the questions one of my friends actually had was regarding your contributions to Magic specifically. How much of those elements still exist today? That was one that he really wanted to ask a friend of mine at the site. Like, how much?
That's a great question because I keep track.
Yeah, we weren't sure if you actually did or did not, so we wanted to ask you how much of that is still you.
Well, some of my content, some of the narratives were retconned out of existence, and I am sad. But a lot of it is still there. My first storyline content came out of Ice Age, which is very early deck from Magic the Gathering, and I helped to establish what happened, how the Ice Age began, all the characters, the planeswalkers, and the living beings on the world of Dominaria who struggled with it, as well as how it ended, and a lot of that content is still canon in the universe of Magic the Gathering, particularly in the Dominaria section. There are a number of planeswalkers who are still kind of floating around that I either created or had a lot to do with in terms of the backstory. Tevis Zot, Limdul, a number of these characters from early on who are still around. and and there are some major conflicts that I helped to develop, like the Urza Mishra War, a lot of the drama of the Elder Dragons, the Magic the Gathering legends like Jakon Blackblade and so forth. All of their backstories I helped to create.
Yeah, all right. Thank you for that information because a lot of my friends they came in during I want to say the mid 2000s. So they asked me, they're like, he did magic. We would love to hear about where it all began per se
It was
because
a
I know
truly
the big boom
fantastic
happened in the
time.
90s.
You know, I was there at the beginning. You know, so being able to help to develop something called the spark in the Planeswalker lore. That was me, and the colors of magic and what their derivations were, how the metaphysics of planeswalking and magic were a lot of the sort of thing that I contributed to.
All right. Thanks for that information.
Sure.
Now, this is for people who did not watch your interview from Ultraman Day, but could you actually explain to our audience that may have not attended or seen the event what is transmedia or transmedia storytelling, as well as what makes Starlight Runner stand out in this field?
Well, it is the nerdiest thing in the universe, and actually, it was inspired by Japanese tokusatsu and anime. Basically, I had a strong dissatisfaction with American Hollywood-style universes that would roll out as a series of sequels, and then the cartoon show would just have nothing to do with the concept, the continuity of the movies, or the novels. The characters didn't sound like the characters that were in the movie. There was a discontinuity there. And I loved a contiguous universe, a universe that was canonical, which was something that the Japanese did really well with their kind of media mix approach to content development. So I started to apply that at Acclaim with Magic the Gathering and with Turok. And the response was huge because we nerds like consistency.
That's true.
You know, we like our universes to operate in concert across different media. And so having done that successfully in the 90s, I wanted to be able to apply those techniques to other companies that needed to operate differently in the 21st century because different media was splintering, and we had to the mobile phone was on the rise, and television and film, they were starting to blend together. So we needed some way to keep track of these universes and to develop them so that they played well on different media platforms. And that technique is something that I call transmedia storytelling. I had a little hyphen between trans and media in my mind, but it turned out that other people were talking about something called transmedia too, and they were, and so I adapted the academics of what that means. So today, one of the most well-known transmedia universes is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? Because the movies, it's not just the movies that all work together. Ostensibly, the Shield TV show and the Netflix Marvel shows and the upcoming Disney Plus shows, the short films that were on the DVDs, they all operate in the same universe. And that's genuine transmedia. Star Wars, the new canonical Star Wars universe is definitely a transmedia universe.
Yeah, because back in the day, it had transmedia, but then there would be other authors brought in, and then it would dilute or dilute the
That's right.
idea. Because I remember growing up, there were like two different ways of Han Solo's origin. It was either Chewie found him when he was young, or he met Chewie when he was older.
That's right, right. So that's you could call that a multi-platform universe. The content was spread across different media, but it wasn't consistent. There wasn't a kind of keeper of the flame making sure that everything was coordinated. Now there is. And Starlight Runner is one of the top companies in the business that does that sort of thing.
All right. So what was it like to have worked alongside Disney, Sony, Mattel, and Hasbro? And what were some of your favorite projects with those collaborations?
Well, it was absolutely stunning. You make something up, as a kind of nerd, and suddenly these Hollywood companies are saying, "Hey, could you come over here and fix this, or help us understand Transformers or Pirates of the Caribbean or something like that?" And it's just amazing because in order to do it well, we had to work directly with the people who created those things. So it wasn't just an assignment given to us by the marketing department of these companies, these studios. They were, the creators, James Cameron, Walter Parks for Men in Black, the top guys at Hasbro. And so it was absolutely a dream come true to be able to work with them and to contribute content that to this day is being seen. There's a new Transformers War for Cybertron, and to my knowledge, one of the first times ever that it was suggested that Optimus Prime and his nemesis were friends at some point, were originally on the same side. Megatron was in the material that we generated for the Transformers mythology for Hasbro, 10 years ago. So so now we're seeing allusions to that narrative in Netflix's War for Cybertron. Am I right, or do you?
Yeah. No,
I'm
trying to. When you said 10 years ago, I'm just putting in my own head at what time that would have been exactly, because I'm like, that would have been animated during the Bayformers, during the initial start of.
That's true. We were brought on for Transformers Prime.
Okay.
Which was post the first
So
Bay.
you guys were a part of the Exodus, I'm guessing, storyline. So, because once you said Optimus and Megatron are friends, IDW started exploring that. That was my light bulb going off, trying to put the continuity. Okay, that's cool. I wouldn't say this is an exclusive, but there's your validation, guys, watching this. Starlight Runner helped.
Awesome. It's awesome to be able to come across that sort of thing and see how the work resonates across different media.
Yeah, I'm just glad though that my knowledge of Transformers is like, wait a second, I'm putting the points together. I'm connecting where you were to the actual scene of the crime of when the events obviously happened. So that's really cool, because I remember back in the day, Exodus was a big deal in the very niche Transformers community. A lot of people wanted to see more of that universe explored, and then. Yeah. And then it felt like Hasbro didn't really stick the landing, but people still loved Prime, which was still in the continuity of what you guys were trying to fully establish, which was books, video game, and that cartoon at the time. But something got lost in translation.
Then they called us back and said, "Can you fix this?" We like it when we hang around for years. Hasbro only, intermittently calls us in.
Yeah, because I didn't even know you heavily worked on a lot of the Mattel Hot Wheels movies. I guess they were they direct to DVD?
They started as direct to DVD, and then they went to Cartoon Network.
Okay. Yeah, because I barely remembered him. I just remembered one of the shows, and I was like, "Oh, he did that too." Okay, I remember my cousin watching it a lot.
Wow, that's great. I love hearing from people who were little kids back then, and they're like, "Oh, you helped my childhood." It's cool.
Yeah. So I guess the major topic that we really have to talk about is obviously Super Eye Productions Ultra Series. I mean, I'm wearing the shirt, for God's sakes, of Ultraman. So I gotta ask you, can we at least discuss how this all came about. Like, did they seek you out or did you go to them?
There was someone in between. There was a company called the Licensing Group. They're
Okay.
based in Los Angeles. They worked on some great properties like Terminator and Aliens and things like that. And I love licensing. To me, a good licensing actually helps tell the story of your universe. And so you want quality licensed products to come out of that universe. And so Danny at the licensing group is considered like a god in the licensing field. So during a visit, just a friendly hi, get to know you kind of meet and greet, he let slip that his next project was something called Ultraman. Ultraman, he said to me, not knowing that I was dying inside. I'm so sorry. Can we pause just a sec?
I can hit the pause.
I meet Danny Simon, the god of licensing, at the licensing group. We're having a great chat, and he lets me know that that his next project is something called Ultraman. Ultraman did not. Wow.
And I thought I would be the one who was going to get all these interruptions. It's okay.
Holy cow. Listen, that's Subaraya.
Oh my God. All right, if you're joining us right now, we were actually interrupted by an emergency meeting, so we're going to continue where we left off on part one, I guess you would say, of this interview with Jeff Gomez of Starlight Runner Entertainment. I almost said Starlight Runner Studio for some reason. In my mind, I want to put studio, not entertainment. But yeah.
We have a studio.
That's true. You do have a studio. And so, ironically, when we got cut off, it was right when we started talking about Ultraman, which is the real reason that we're here. Sure. And I wanted to know, like, how did it come about that you got this deal? Like, did they seek you out, or did you go to them, as we were trying to ask last time?
Sure. I've always had a fascination with licensing. To me, a licensed product is a product that actually helps to tell the story of the thing that you love. So when we played with Star Wars toys, those were licensed products, but it actually enabled us to tell more Star Wars stories, at least for ourselves in our bedrooms or in our backyards and so forth. And so Danny Simon is one of the great licensing agents. He was responsible for licensing the big James Cameron movies and the Terminator film, the Terminator 2. He also did Mortal Kombat and so forth. So through various channels, I just went to meet with him while I was in Los Angeles, and we hung out and looked at his toys, and I asked him what he was doing next, and he said, "Oh, I've got this thing called Ultraman. I don't know too much about it, but I think I'm going to represent it. It's been a while since Ultraman was in the United States, and I'm going to bring it back." And I was like, "What?" I said, Ultraman saved my life. Ultraman was, I brought kaiju into my living room every week. It was the greatest thing ever for me when I was a kid, because he was so heroic, and he battled monsters. Please, if you have anything to do with Ultraman and you need an expert, call upon me. And he said, well, actually, why don't you come to Japan with me and meet Subaraya, meet the people there? And I said, what? Sure. And we did. I went with him, and I had a little presentation that explained what my company does, and on the off chance that they wanted to see it, I told them, I had something, and I planted a few slides about Ultraman in the slideshow just to show my love for the property. And there I was in the Subaraya offices, looking at the statue of Ultraman, looking at all the kaiju toys and things like that. I just couldn't believe it. And there in their conference room, I gave a presentation talking to them, basically thanking them for creating something so wonderful. And they said, listen, why don't you work with Danny and help him with the creative? Because we want to bring Ultraman stories to America. And that was all I needed to hear. We teamed up after that. We did a deal. And one of our first targets was Marvel Comics. And that gave birth to the Rise of Ultraman comic book series.
Oh, that's really cool to hear, because not many people get to actually have that chance of, why don't you just come along and promote what you do to see if they like you? And that I find really unique. I'm assuming you had to do it all through a translator. So as you're presenting, they had translators, or
believe it or not, most of the executives spoke English.
Oh, that's really unique.
And they were extremely friendly and pleasant. And those who didn't, they were quick on the uptake. In other words, they understood roughly what I said and only needed a little bit of translation at any given point. One of the most amazing things that I got to do while I was there was they had the Ultraman Festival on tour. And it was at a shopping mall not that far from Subaraya. And they took me to the Ultraman Festival, which consisted of a kaiju museum with the actual props from the show. And then there was an immense diorama of Ultraman Rube RB battling a kaiju. And then they had a live show. And I'm sure you've heard about those live shows that they get.
Yeah, they actually put the Rube one on their YouTube channel recently.
There you go. That's it. Yes.
I actually love it. I want the soundtrack for when Alien Emperor sings his little song as he's beating all the Ultra Citizens. That's like one of my favorite songs ever. I was like, that's great.
After the show, I was shocked to see Ultras come out and greet the kids. And I got to shake hands with Ultra 7, who was my Ultra. I was just, I mean, I was almost crying. It was awesome.
Yeah, I grew up actually with the TNT syndication. So I had that, and then I had the internet close around that time. So I was excited when Foxbox was bringing TaJa, but then I was like disappointed when like the dub kept switching, but from being serious to comedic.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
I know. So the next question I actually had was, what was like one of your immediate reactions once everything was like solidified that you knew that technically you were going to have your hands on Ultraman? Since like you say yourself, you're so enthusiastic, you were like in tears meeting, Ultra 7 at the stage. So like for you, like how would you express like this dream come true scenario? Like what would be like the best way to describe it when like you knew everything was signed and done and you could start progressing with expanding the franchise?
It's actually, and I'm very lucky because this has happened a few times in my life where just unimaginable things, came to pass. One was working on Avatar and getting to work a little bit with James Cameron. There was this sense of responsibility because I was in essence the voice of the fans. There was this sense of being a little bit overwhelmed because the responsibility included all 50 years of Ultraman. And there were a few that I had not even seen, so that was rough, particularly Generation 3. And then trying to explain Ultraman to my own team at Starlight Runner, some of whom were not as big a fan of the show, and having them mock me a lot for being such a fan, that was a little rough. But in general, it was really, really like the feeling that it, it if you've ever dreamed of something that actually manifested and was pretty close to what you could have hoped it would be, and there you are in it, it's evidence that that's possible, that you can dream something and actually realize it and feel good about it and get paid for it, and see it on everyone's screen in the office because they're all working on some aspect of it, was really, really deeply satisfying.
Now, that's really cool to hear. Ironically, this is a question that I kind of chuckled at because I think it was either the day of the interview or immediately after we had to reschedule the whole thing. I saw on Facebook a post that you were actually legitimately commenting on in one of the groups I'm in, and that I don't even know, like I found you through like Facebook suggestions, but it was just uncanny that this specific group I was in, you were also in. And the question was, like, when the announcement was made that Starlight Runner was working with Subaraya, why did outlets want to choose the word reboot to promote this? I couldn't understand it, because even myself, and I think even some of the statements you said eventually in the Facebook thread that I was following were pointing out that it's not a reboot. So why do they keep using reboot?
You know, it's a in Hollywood, it's a convenient term to say we're starting over again. And there was a general understanding that Ultraman had been here before, so that effectively we're bringing him back and starting from a kind of scratch. And so I understand the use of that term, but as far as I'm concerned, and one of the reasons I think that Subaraya and the licensing group chose Starlight Runner is because we have always seen the Ultraman universe as a continuum. It is a universe. It's basically a multiverse, and that reference is made in Zet right now. Oh, Ginga Dinah, they're from a different dimension. You know, they exist. We coexist in different dimensions. We actually can traverse dimensions, but that's just what it is. There are certain constants. There is the land of light. There is the monster graveyard, the kaiju graveyard. There are certain things that exist in all dimensions. So what I'm imagining in my mind when we're doing Ultraman content here in the United States, it is an expansion of the Ultraman multiverse, not a reboot.
Yeah, because that's what I was trying to explain to people, is that it would only be a reboot if, like, we were making, I would say, an original co-production, like the 90s pilot series, which starred Kane Kosogi, which was Ultraman the Ultimate Hero, and then there was Ultraman Great for Australia that was also supposed to air in America. But essentially, since there's no real original production that we know of, that is just the comics and distributing the manga, anime, and the shows, it's just more or less revitalizing the brand, not a reboot. So unless you guys told Hollywood Reporter and like Sci-Fi Channel that there's a movie in the works, I don't think reboot is the right term for.
Well,
Ultraman.
let's put it this way. We're not just here to make comic books.
Yeah, I know. So it is coming. It's just not in the near future, technically. Yeah, that's what I assumed. Yeah,
not too near.
Yeah, not too near. Possibly near, but not too near.
Right. So you know, in media there may be Ultraman stories. You know, but even then, I wouldn't call it a reboot, because my goal will be for there to be a canonical continuity.
All right, that's good to know, because I just think that was ironic that the day either of or after, I was like, wow, that's ironic, that whole Facebook thread when they were going.
Let that be proof that I am a fan, because I was on some of those boards before all this, and I'm still on those boards, and I participate.
Exactly.
And if I see something, I say something.
I choose now to step back, because whenever I say something, I get called like the most ludicrous crap, because I'm not a made man yet.
Oh, no. I get called ludicrous crap too.
Oh, yeah.
So don't worry about it. It doesn't matter if I'm official. Believe me, I've got knocked around.
Oh, for me, it's more like, since I'm not official, my word doesn't mean crap here. All right. So the next question was, are there any upcoming projects that you can freely discuss about or promote? I mean, all I know is the comic, but I'm guessing there's most of the other stuff is still under wraps, correct?
Well, I think Netflix said that there'd be a second anime season from production IG and Subaraya.
Mm-hmm.
That's super exciting. There are more details coming up. There's Shin Ultraman, which hopefully will get people in North America hopefully will be able to check that out. And there's some great licensed products coming up. In fact, I think just this week, Starlight Runner posted a number of new licensed products on the Ultraman Galaxy website. And some of that stuff is so cool. It's classic Ultraman stuff, and well worth checking out. There's the Marvel comic, and hopefully there will be a lot of content generated out of the comic. The Ultraman Galaxy website is going to be doing profiles of the kaiju that are being featured in the comic, and a lot of backstory and stuff like that. As far as audio-visual content, we have to stay quiet for now while the deals are being negotiated.
All right. Here's just a offshoot of mentioning stuff you were promoting. When eventually, I guess, Shin Ultraman gets closer to its release date in Japan or finalized in production, are there talks to possibly try to do a Fandango event like Toho did for Shin Godzilla? Or, like, is that still too far off to talk about? Because I feel like that would be a cool idea, is to do Fandango or Fathom events or whatever they would call it.
I think it would be a cool idea, too.
Everyone's gonna be like,
but nothing official.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was sitting there like, everyone's gonna be like, Wheelz, why are you trying to poke the bear? I'm like, hey, whatever information is good information, whether it's yes or maybe.
Look, you know what I'd really love? I'd love for fans to be involved, whatever it happens to be. Some real fan involvement. So sorry. Can you put it on pause?
So, the next question I have for you actually is, since you've been talking about concepts with it saying expanding the Ultra series, what are you looking forward to specifically exploring within the, I guess, overarching metaverse or multiverse, and what particular elements or pre-existing characters would you want to expand upon?
Oh, that's an easy question to answer. My first and great love was the.
It's fine. It is completely fine.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
She likes to sit next to me. Doggy. We're still good?
Yeah, we're still good. It's fine. That's an excellent outtake, seeing that during Ultraman Day, Kyle Higgins' cat kept jumping up in front of the camera.
That's right, I remember.
Yeah.
My first great love was classic Ultraman, and there was something to me that was implied by the intervention of the Ultras in the affairs of humanity. And I thought about, what are they doing here? Why do they care? And if we do so much to generate and aggravate these kaiju, why are they putting up with us, the Ultras? And also I had questions about why they hesitated. You know, they would wait until the last possible minute to intervene, and there was a minimalism to their intervention. 3 minutes, that's it. You know, what is the answer to all that? And the answer, I believe, lies in what it is that they stand for with regard to what they want in us, what they see in our potential as human beings. And if you follow the process of the relationship between the Ultras and humanity over the course of decades and across multiple dimensions, we kind of become a little bit better. We, as human beings, we become a little bit more worthy. We become stronger allies to them, and I think that that's their purpose. You know, so I would like to explore that with the franchise. What does it mean to be Ultra, and how can we be Ultra as human beings? When you're doing an American-based franchise, you need to make sure that the human characters are interesting and engaging and go somewhere. That's why we love the Marvel Cinematic Universe so much. We like the superheroes, but we also like who they really are and who their friends are, and so forth, the supporting cast. And to see more of that with the Ultras, and how they are impacted by the Ultras and how humanity as a whole is impacted is, to me, still ripe for exploration.
All right, that's actually a good point, because for people who haven't seen the Ultra series, that like elements like that you're addressing are addressed in some of the other shows, TaJa, Gaia, Nexus, Mabius, and some of the new generation. And it's a point that I think, while it's a concept that gets slightly touched upon in those mediums or in the series as a whole, they don't ever try to make it the real theme of exposition for a character. And to try to make that a major focus and a feature is, I think, one of the underlining but most rewarding aspects of the overall encompassing thing of the Ultra series. Like you say, why do they keep coming here? And I love all the, like, I guess, answers that Tsuburaya has created throughout the years. So to see you going, this is something that we need to focus on,
yeah,
is, like, I think, a true respect but understanding of what really goes on in these shows as it eventually evolved.
It also distinguishes Ultraman from Power Rangers or you know, the Super Sentai shows, and Kamen Rider and so forth. There is a you know, we know why those heroes do what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But it is not as clear to the common fan about it, and those themes have not, like you said, have not been fully developed or made the focal point of a story. So now that's my personal interest. I believe that Tsuburaya as a company is interested in that exploration, but there's been no storyline set yet.
Yeah, that's completely understandable, because I know how I used to have to explain the Showa series was that they were sort of like Green Lantern, because the way they would switch out almost every year but still be tied was that, oh, they're just a cop on patrol and they're assigned Earth. But there was no real reason why do they need to guard Earth outside of the fact that there's kaiju there or alien invasions. But then as they've gone back and retroactively explained stuff that goes on in the Showa era, it starts making more sense, because I think this is weird, but to quote something or paraphrase out of the Michael Bay first Transformers film, it was like when Optimus sees Earth and they're like, oh, they don't deserve our protection. And they go, but weren't we so naive once because we thought we didn't need protection, or we were at peace with each other and thus brought civil war? These people need guardians. So like, it was one of those lines that, like, when I saw that in the Bayverse first movie, at least the first movie, I thought that was a really good quote about like what Ultraman sort of represents. It's like, we're here because we were once them, or we were once similar to them, especially in the regards of what exactly Ultramen are super mutants of humanity from an alternate or distant galaxy.
That's right.
So
that's right. Very good.
Yeah,
that's quite insightful, and I like the link to the Transformers thing, being that I worked on Transformers.
Yeah, which since people already saw the first half of this, already know. Yeah, so tying back to our first part, so how you were mentioning that when you first got with the licensing group, you were not up to date with, I guess, as you call it, the third generation of Ultraman, the new generation era. But besides like the vintage Showa favorites, like Shodai Ultraman or Ultra 7, what are some of your favorites outside of those at least two defined series?
Mabius is one that I enjoyed for certain reasons, and I like the individual characters. Zero is awesome to me, and then the Ginga, Dinah, and TaJa were super cool for the reasons you mentioned, just that they were more thoughtful, and the effects were still pre-digital and like super serious and so forth. I like that stuff. And then of course I can't help but fall in love with TaJa and Zet, because I'm with them every day. They're my people, particularly Zet, who had just gone into development while I was just starting out with Subaraya.
All right, that's cool. Like I always tell people, always go with that 90s trilogy if you want to know what's the best of both worlds, of like before we got very CG, but we were still very in that new exploration of what the Showa era used to be. So
yeah,
it's always a good thing to check them out.
Difficult to reconcile their mythologies, that trilogy, with the rest of the Ultra mythology, but I think we're getting a handle on it.
Yeah, I've always explained to people that one of the most interesting things is how the 90s, and I would say even Cosmos and Max, kind of slightly took steps away from the original, I guess you'd say, Land of Light, because TaJa and Dinah are in the same universe. Gaia is like in a parallel universe to TaJa and Dinah. Then Cosmos is sort of parallel to them. And then Max is an alternate version of, I guess you would say, the Shodai universe, the original. It gets very interesting when you try to start converging, because ever since they started bringing in the multiverse with Mega Monster Battle. All right, yeah, as I was saying, though, before I was interrupted because of my net, I was saying that just ever since the multiverse started fully being expanded and explored since Zero, it's also been hard as an Ultra Series fan to try to tie the universe, especially in the Ultraman Zero movie, which I think is going to be released soon by Mill Creek, either end of this year or beginning of next year. There's a part where he's literally flying through the multiverse, and it's like they're all different, like the universes themselves are condensed into planets within a galaxy of a galaxy. And it was like the weirdest concept ever, that they're like, oh yeah, here's your main universe, this is so massive, but then here's the multiverse, and it's like all of these like stars and planets within it.
Awesome. It's stayed so imaginative.
Yeah,
franchise. I love it. But yep, that's that opened the door for us. So I'm glad about that.
All right. What are your opinions on this? I like to call it the Tokusatsu Renaissance in North America, with the various remasters of the kaiju films with Godzilla, Gamera, Ultra Series distribution, and then TaJa trying to make their own YouTube channel, and the fact that they're trying to bring over Kamen Rider through Shout Factory. Like, what's your entire thoughts of just this huge, giant, I guess, storm of all these great Japanese franchises and heroes showing up in our market?
The world finally caught up to us? No. Um, here's what here. You know, I thought about this seriously, and uh, one of the things that I think is the main driving factor is that when you look at this content, it's there. There is a physicality to it. We have gotten used to the fact that digital art can effectively make anything look absolutely real in front of our eyes, but it isn't so perfected that we can't tell at all anymore. So even in the end of Avengers Endgame, which is a movie that cost $500 million, we're looking at it, and it is awesome. There is no question about that. But we are looking at a spectacle that we know is, in effect, an animated feature. You know, it is basically a full motion video like you see in the video games. When you look at tokusatsu, those dudes are there. They are smashing each other in the head. They are falling off buildings. They are kicking each other's butts. They are wearing those hot, heavy outfits. The cities that they're going through, were built. Somebody actually had to make that stuff. And there's something that's kind of awesome about that. Something that to a generation of people who are, you know, even like 25 years old or younger, we're all looking at that and going, wow, you know, I haven't seen that before. Where it's just real, there's no digital effects, or you know, maybe some rays shooting back and forth, but there's a tangibility to it, and a charm to the effort of it that I think is engaging. That it's fun. There's also some training that we've all been given through anime and through Japanese popular culture in general. So when we look at even the simplified narratives of the older shows, we read more into them because we understand the code of various facial expressions, various stances, and various allusions to the greater narrative. And so it's pleasing for us. We're there, we're with it.
All right. That makes a lot of sense, actually. Just 1 second. I just got to make sure I save the video from the first part that just accidentally occurred. So I'm just going to hit OK. And we're good. And we can still continue on.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's really good. I guess answer for this whole tokusatsu renaissance is the fact that it's man-made. It's hands-on, still a work of art in the sense of people put time and effort to construct the sets, people put time to make the suits, people putting their bodies on the line. Like, this is a professional wrestling match where, while you may know the outcome of, or results of the match, someone might still get hurt if they take a bump the wrong way or if they take a fall the wrong way, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's great. I think for a commercial standpoint, like, I think your joke at the beginning of, oh, the world just caught up to us makes a lot of sense, because it wasn't so long ago, like you say, the MCU, it was only losers read comic books or whatever, nerds or geeks and stuff, and I'm like, what? So it's one of those things of, I think that sense of pop culture shows that anyone can really watch and enjoy anything. Because, I mean, in the 90s, it wasn't being a geek to watch shows like, I think, Hercules and Xena, but it was being a geek if you watched, like, Star Trek Next Generation or Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
And it was like, Okay. So I see that thing of like it's more of the acceptance now. So that's a really great thing, especially because for me, I'm like, hey, I get to finally enjoy what I want as an official medium rather than having to bootleg it like I used to have to do since 2003, you know? So,
Agreed 100%.
I'm trying to just make sure I'm losing a little track here, but,
Mhm.
so just, I guess with the, like, we have only like 4 questions left, so I just have out of the first of the four, uh, what Ultraman collectibles have you sought out to own or have actually been gifted to you since you've been working with Subaraya?
um, I love meeting with them because they know that there's a very easy way to make me happy. So I've gotten a few Bondis, and a few SH figure arts, all my favorites. We're not in my my other quarters that have all the Ultraman stuff around, but uh, the uh, the Zet Riser is something that we recently got hold of. We are looking for cards. They are very easy to bend, so they don't stay in mint condition for very long if you're messing around with them. um, but yeah, I like the high end, gorgeous stuff that is fully articulated, or uh, the vintage vinyl Bondis. You know, those are what I grew up with. So I love the smell of them.
Oh yeah, those vinyl smells. They just wake you up in the morning, especially if they're fresh and new. Those stench, oof, they're intoxicating and possibly toxic. But who knows? You'll find out in 20 or 30 years if you die from it.
That's right. That's right.
Because I know with some people they've stated that like when they've gotten gifts and stuff, it sometimes ends up being like almost props or resin reproductions of props. Because I think some actors or writers and stuff said that like they once got a resin version of one of their favorite transformation devices, or they
You
actually
don't
got
love me that much.
yeah they not yet. You're saying not yet.
The new beta capsule, the one that's in that they showed at
Yeah,
the
Ultraman Day.
Day, it's so good. I actually played with it. It weighs like a pound. I mean, it's heavy in your hand, and the flash is quite brilliant. So A+ for me on the beta.
You can use it as a way of special as a defense tactics. Just flash and run, run. All right, no, that's great. And so back to at least what you do and how you do it. With technology along with social media marketing evolving, what would you say is the next evolution or step for Starlight Runner Entertainment? Like, what's its next step in I guess progressing with the times?
Sure. You know, we were well on our way to exploring themed and immersive venues. So remember the Ultraman Festival that I
Yeah.
described? I would love to create kind of a cutting edge 21st century version of that, where you can go in and interact with the characters and possibly even be involved in some kind of storyline and things like that. Of course, all of that got put on hold because of the apocalypse. But you know, I do believe that that's going to come back. That type of entertainment form, which is fully participative physically, where you can just enter into a universe. Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is an example of it at the Disney parks. So there's all that. And the other thing that I'm really interested in is audio and audio drama. Um, uh, uh, I may be wrong, but I saw some subtitled Ultraman audio dramas floating
Yes.
around out there.
Yes, they did start subbing the audio dramas for TaJa and Zet. I don't know the people personally who did the the subbing. I know people who might know them, but
Uh-huh.
I I do know that they do exist in the fan communities.
Right. So, I'd love for Subaraya to do that officially. I know there's a significant expense to it, but the technology and what it will be able to do with audio, particularly with headphones or with Dolby Atmos in a room environment, is just incredible. And we're going to be able to do things like uh, branching narratives. We're going to be able to interact with audio characters to change the course of the story and stuff like that. I'm really interested in that stuff.
All right. And the next one is, where do you actually see the, I guess, well, I don't know how the best way to explain this, but where do you see transmedia storytelling going also in the future? Like, where do you see that line, I guess, of business ventures and other stuff? Because obviously you're one of the main key people producing it with Starlight Runner, but where do you see, like, just, I guess, the field of transmedia business going?
Well, I'll be candid with you. I'm a little surprised that more major companies have not caught on to what makes transmedia storytelling so effective. Disney has it down pretty well. They don't do it perfectly all the time, but quite often it's pretty well done, and the Marvel stuff is just superb. Um, uh, Other companies have other studios have tried to create these transmedia franchises, and they jam it in too fast. They're impatient, or they don't allow a singular visionary to construct it adequately. They take these gambles with people who aren't even a part of their companies, and let them be the visionary and so forth, and it doesn't work out. I believe that there is a generation of talent that grew up or has been growing up with Marvel and with Star Wars and with Harry Potter and so forth. The people who know how to do it well, or who are figuring out how to do it well and can recognize it and can become the transmedia visionaries of the future. And so we're going to see in the years to come more brilliantly executed multi-platform franchises. And I think they'll be born from different places. They'll be born out of audio, like podcasts, or they'll be born out of video games and be effective across multiple media. I'm hoping that Halo TV series is good, because if it is, then that will be evidence of a new transmedia success. So yeah, just more visionaries, more artists, and more companies that trust in canonical transmedia storytelling is what's next.
All right. And so this last question, I didn't expect my staff to come up with it, but one of my friends particularly took to the fact that when you're not doing your transmedia stuff, when you're not working with like Hollywood per se, you've gone around and done actual, like, I guess it would be like activism and stuff like that. You've gone to schools, you've gone to talk to people, you've gone to do lectures, and particularly there was this one that is called the Never Give Up speech. My friend wanted to know, since he couldn't find a full version of it on the internet, would you be willing to give us not the full speech itself, but explain what you, I guess, talk about in that speech, like bullet points of when you go to these schools, when you have these lectures, when you have these, I guess, just meet and greets or whatever? Like, what is the core of that speech?
Oh, well, that's a great question. Thank you for noticing those talks. It's not something that's well advertised. Look, if I when I was a kid and I'd go to my assembly in the auditorium of my elementary school or in high school or even in college, nobody ever came and said, hey, this is what you can do, and here's how you might try to do it, and offered practical advice, who told me I had a chance. Um, and and nobody, everybody was so interested in talking about their successes that they didn't talk about how it's hard to do it, and what to do when it gets hard. So that's where the don't give up aspect comes in. Every time I do something of any significance that is outward facing, somebody comes and tells me how stupid it is, you know, or that I'm a moron, or that you know, it's derivative, or whatever, you know. Today, I happened to needed to Google something, and I stumbled upon an article that goes on for pages and pages and pages, tearing apart my theory of collective journey storytelling. I believe that there's a model of storytelling that takes into account social media and stuff like that, and it's very important to understand. And this dude wrecked it, and did it in like all these nasty ways, you know, with personal attacks and stuff like
Wow.
that. I've been at this for decades, and still, no matter what I do, no matter how successful I've become, somebody is out to rain on my parade. So what do you do? That's what that talk is about: how to persevere in the face of adversity, but also how not to lose yourself to anger, to distraction, to drugs and alcohol, or you know, there are dangers out there, and so how do you navigate those choppy waters, and how do you bring people onto your side, and allow for them to help you to realize these things that you deeply desire, fulfill your goals and dreams in a way that's positive for yourself, but also for the world. That's essentially that talk, and I give it to this day, all over the world,
All
through
right.
Zoom.
No, that's why we put it as our last question, because we thought it was a good way to encapsulate at least your career thus far, and talk about like all the stuff you've done, all the stuff you are doing, and then tell people, hey, if they see you in person at a lecture hall, actually listen to you, because
Oh,
the assembly
sure.
part sounds very interesting. It sounds very
Yes.
important.
I do coaching, by the way. On top of all of this, there's on the Starlight Runner website, SLR lifestory.com. SLRlifestory.com is my coaching, and both myself and my team coach young people who want to break into the entertainment industry, and so forth. And that's another way that we try and give back a little bit.
All right, that's good to know.
Mhm.
I'll have to check that out personally too, since I'm sitting here going, well, the reason I'm a journalist and historian, or want to be a historian of this kind of media, specifically tokusatsu, is because I used to want to act and write for it, but then I'm
Wow.
in my mindset of, well, you're physically disabled and it's going to be a hard transfer to get to Japan, so why don't you just try to find ways to promote what you enjoy? And that's my mindset.
Well, you're doing it right now, and that goes a long, long way, because you're helping to share these ideas with any number of people, and I appreciate that.
All right, thank you very much. And so I think that's all I have for the rest of this interview to ask you. We had like 15 or something questions. I enjoyed every moment talking with you, even the interruptions aside. Those were interesting. Nevertheless, though, Hero Club, my guest has been Jeff Gomez of Starlight Runner Entertainment. How can people find you on social media? Like, what places can people follow you at?
Hero Club, all of you, jump onto my social media. I'm so easy to find. Just Google me, and you'll find all the links. But on Facebook, it's Facebook/transmedia. On Twitter, it's at Jeff_Gomez, and on LinkedIn, just look up Jeff Gomez, and you'll find me. Those are the three that are most active right now.
All right. And with that, I've been Wheelchair21. You can find me at, obviously, Wheelchair21. And with Hero Club, it's hero-club.com. And you can follow us at Hero Club for Life across social media. We'll see you next time with another interview. Who that may be, we don't know yet.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.